The gallows stood empty that morning in Willits, California. But Nora Wallace knew they would not remain so for long if her father continued down his chosen path. She pressed her palm against the cool glass of the general store window, watching the dust kick up from the street as wagons rolled past, their wheels creaking under the weight of supplies and dreams. It was April 1876, and spring had painted the valley in shades of green that would soon fade to gold under the unforgiving summer sun. "Miss Wallace, your father sent me to collect you." The voice behind her carried the smooth confidence of a man accustomed to getting what he wanted. Nora did not need to turn around to know that Theodore Ashworth stood there in his tailored suit, boots so polished they reflected the morning light streaming through the storefront. She turned slowly, taking in the sight of him. Theodore was handsome in the way that money made men handsome, everything about him carefully arranged and expensive. His dark hair was pomaded back, his mustache trimmed to perfection, and the gold watch chain hanging from his vest probably cost more than most families in Willits earned in a year. "I am perfectly capable of finding my own way home, Mr. Ashworth," Nora said, her voice steady despite the unease settling in her stomach. "I insist." He offered his arm, and Nora knew refusing would only delay the inevitable conversation. Her father had made his intentions clear over breakfast that morning. Theodore Ashworth owned half the timberland in Mendocino County, and Samuel Wallace saw an opportunity to secure his daughter's future while solving his mounting debts. The walk to the Wallace home took them past the saloon, where even at this early hour the sound of piano music drifted through the doors. Nora kept her eyes forward, aware of the curious glances from townsfolk who knew exactly what Theodore's attention meant. By evening, the whole town would be buzzing with speculation about an engagement. Their house sat at the edge of town, a two-story structure that had seen better days. The paint was peeling, and the front porch sagged slightly on the left side. Samuel Wallace stood on that porch now, his face lighting up at the sight of Theodore escorting his daughter. "Mr. Ashworth, right on time. Come in, come in." Samuel's eagerness made Nora's stomach turn. Her father had been a proud man once, before her mother's death 3 years ago, before the gambling debts and the desperation that followed. Inside, the house smelled of the bread Nora had baked that morning. She excused herself to prepare coffee, needing a moment away from the performance about to unfold in the parlor. Through the thin walls, she could hear the murmur of male voices, her father's obsequious tone making her grip the coffee pot harder than necessary. When she returned with the tray, both men stood. Theodore took the cup she offered with a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. "Nora," her father began, his voice unnaturally bright, "Mr. Ashworth has something he would like to ask you." Theodore set down his cup and crossed the small room to stand before her. From his vest pocket, he produced a velvet box. The ring inside was magnificent, a large diamond surrounded by smaller stones that caught the light and threw rainbows across the faded wallpaper. "Miss Wallace, you must know the high regard in which I hold you. You would do me the greatest honor if you would consent to become my wife." His proposal was practiced, smooth, and entirely devoid of any real feeling. Nora looked at the ring, then at her father's hopeful face, then back at Theodore. She had known this moment was coming, had spent sleepless nights trying to reconcile her duty with the screaming protest in her heart. Theodore was not cruel, but he collected beautiful things the way other men collected debts, and she would become just another possession in his grand house. "Mr. Ashworth, I am sensible of the honor you do me, but I must decline." The words came out stronger than she felt inside. The silence that followed was deafening. Her father's face went from hopeful to pale to red in the span of seconds. "Nora, perhaps you need time to consider," Theodore said, his composure slipping slightly. "I have considered, and my answer is no. I do not love you, Mr. Ashworth, and I will not marry without love." Theodore's jaw tightened. He snapped the ring box shut and returned it to his pocket. "You are making a mistake, Miss Wallace. Opportunities like this do not come twice." "Then I shall live with my mistake." After Theodore left, his footsteps heavy on the porch steps, Samuel Wallace turned to his daughter with fury in his eyes. "Do you have any idea what you have done? That man could have saved us. The bank is threatening to foreclose on this house. We have debts, Nora, debts that need paying." "Then we shall find another way to pay them. I will not sell myself like livestock at auction." "You foolish girl, love. Love does not put food on the table or keep a roof over your head. Your mother understood duty." "My mother married you for love," Nora said quietly. "She told me so many times before she died. She would not want this for me." Samuel's anger deflated slightly, but his face remained hard. "You have 2 months to change your mind before the bank takes this house. Think about that while you cling to your romantic notions." Nora spent the rest of that day in her mother's garden, pulling weeds and trying to calm the storm in her chest. She had done the right thing, she knew that, but the weight of responsibility pressed down on her shoulders. The garden had been her mother's pride, and Nora had maintained it faithfully, finding peace among the herbs and flowers. The next morning, Nora woke before dawn and dressed in her simplest dress. If her father would not find a solution to their problems, she would. The mercantile in town was looking for help, and though the wages would be modest, it was a start. The walk into town took her past the small farms that dotted the valley. Spring planting was underway, and she could see men and women working in the fields, their backs bent to the eternal rhythm of agricultural life. The air smelled of earth and possibility. Willits was just beginning to stir when she reached the main street. The general store would not open for another hour, so Nora sat on the bench outside and watched the town come to life. The blacksmith's hammer began its steady rhythm. The aroma of fresh bread wafted from the bakery. Horses were led from the livery, their hooves clopping against the packed earth. "You are up early." The voice was unfamiliar, rough but not unkind. Nora looked up to see a man leading a horse toward the water trough. He was tall and lean, with sun-darkened skin and light brown hair that needed cutting. His clothes were worn but clean, and his boots were caked with the red dirt common to the rangeland north of town. "I could say the same of you," Nora replied. The man grinned, and something in that smile made her breath catch. "Work does not wait for the sun, miss. Name's Nathan Owens. I work at the Henderson Ranch up north." "Nora Wallace." She found herself smiling back. Nathan tipped his hat. "Pleasure to meet you, Miss Wallace. If you will excuse me, my horse here is mighty thirsty, and I have supplies to collect before heading back." She watched him go, noting the easy way he moved, comfortable in his own skin in a way that Theodore's polished manners could never replicate. There was dirt on his boots, dust on his hat, and calluses she could see on his hands when he had tipped his brim. He was nobody important, just a ranch hand earning wages, and yet something about that brief exchange stayed with her. The store owner, Mrs. Patterson, arrived shortly after and seemed surprised but pleased by Nora's request for employment. "I've been needing help with inventory and serving customers. Your mother was a fine woman, and I know you are cut from the same cloth. When can you start?" "Today, if you need me." By noon, Nora was learning the ins and outs of the mercantile trade. She helped customers, restocked shelves, and tried not to think about her father's reaction when she told him about her new employment. The work was honest, and though the pay would not solve all their problems immediately, it was earned through her own effort. not sold through marriage. Nathan Owens came in around midday, his arms full of supplies. Nora found herself at the counter as he approached, setting down bags of flour, coffee, and other staples. "Miss Wallace, I did not expect to see you here," he said, and she could not tell if that was approval or surprise in his voice. "I started today. Mrs. Patterson needed help. Good for you." He said it simply, but she sensed he meant it. While she tallied his purchases, Nathan leaned against the counter in a way that suggested he was in no hurry despite his earlier words about work. "How long have you worked at the Henderson Ranch?" Nora asked, curious despite herself. "Going on 3 years now. Came out from Missouri after the war ended. Well, not right after, took a few years to find my feet. Been here since the ranch was still getting established. Do you like it?" "The work, I mean." Nathan considered the question with the seriousness it perhaps did not deserve. "It is honest work. Hard but honest. The land here is beautiful, even if it is unforgiving at times, better than some places I have been." There was something in his tone that suggested stories he was not telling. But before Nora could probe further, Mrs. Patterson called for her help with another customer. When she turned back, Nathan was counting out coins for his purchase. "I am sure I will see you around, Miss Wallace," he said as he gathered his supplies. "I am sure you will, Mr. Owens." After he left, Mrs. Patterson gave Nora a knowing look. "Nathan Owens is a good man, keeps to himself mostly, but he is decent and hardworking. Not like some of the ranch hands who spend their pay on whiskey and cards." Nora busied herself organizing the ribbon display, uncomfortable with the direction of the conversation. She had just refused one man. She did not need the town speculating about another. Word of her refusal of Theodore Ashworth spread through Willits faster than a brush fire. By the end of her first week at the Mercantile, Nora had endured countless questions, thinly veiled as concern about her decision. Some people seemed to admire her conviction. Others clearly thought her a fool for turning down security and status. Theodore himself came into the store on Saturday afternoon. Nora was helping a rancher's wife select fabric when she saw him enter. Her stomach clenched, but she kept her voice steady as she finished with her customer. "Miss Wallace, might I have a word?" Theodore's tone was pleasant, but Nora saw the steel underneath. "I am working, Mr. Ashworth. It will only take a moment." He lowered his voice, though anyone nearby could still hear. "I wanted you to know that I have spoken with your father about his debts. I could still be persuaded to help if you would reconsider my offer." The implication was clear. Refuse him, and her father would lose everything. Nora felt her temper rise but kept it in check. "My answer has not changed. If you wish to help my father out of Christian charity, that is your business, but I will not be bought." Theodore's pleasant mask slipped. "You are making this harder than it needs to be. I am a patient man, Miss Wallace, but my patience has limits. Your father's debts come due in a matter of weeks. Then I suggest you discuss that with him, not with me." Nora turned back to the shelves, her hands trembling slightly as she straightened jars of preserves that did not need straightening. After Theodore left, Mrs. Patterson touched Nora's shoulder gently. "You stood your ground. That took courage. It does not feel like courage. It feels like I am watching a storm approach and have no shelter. You will find a way, I believe that." Nora wished she shared that confidence. That evening, as she walked home with her week's wages in her pocket, Nora calculated numbers in her head. The amount she earned would help with food and small expenses, but it would barely make a dent in her father's gambling debts or the mortgage arrears. She needed to find more work, but where? She already spent 6 days a week at the Mercantile. Lost in thought, she nearly collided with a horse and rider at the edge of town. Strong hands steadied her, and she looked up into Nathan Owens' concerned face. "Whoa there, Miss Wallace. You all right?" He had dismounted and stood close enough that she could smell leather and sun-warmed cotton. "Yes, I apologize. I was not paying attention." Nathan's horse, a sturdy bay gelding, nuzzled at Nora's shoulder, making her laugh despite her troubled thoughts. She reached up to stroke the animal's nose. "He likes you. That is a good sign," Nathan said. "Old Rusty here is particular about people. He is beautiful. He is stubborn and ornery, but we get along." Nathan's tone was affectionate. He studied Nora's face in the golden light of approaching sunset. "You look troubled, if you do not mind me saying." Nora was not sure why she told him. Perhaps it was because he was still relatively a stranger, or perhaps because his face held genuine concern without judgment. The words spilled out. Her father's debts, Theodore's proposal and subsequent threats, her determination to find a way forward that did not involve selling herself. Nathan listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment, his hand absently stroking Rusty's neck. "That is a difficult position," he finally said. "For what it is worth, I think you did the right thing. Marriage without love is like a house without a foundation, looks fine on the outside until the first storm comes through. Have you ever been married, Mr. Owens?" "No, madam." "Came close once, back in Missouri before the war. She married someone else while I was away fighting, probably for the best, looking back. We wanted different things." He said it without bitterness, just simple fact. "I am sorry. Don't be. It taught me something important. Life is too short and too hard to spend it with the wrong person." Nathan glanced at the darkening sky. "Can I walk you home? It will be full dark soon." Nora accepted, and they walked in comfortable silence, Nathan leading Rusty beside them. When they reached her house, her father was not home, probably at the saloon spending money they did not have. "Thank you for listening," Nora said. "It helped speaking to someone who does not have expectations of me." "Anytime, Miss Wallace, I mean that." Nathan remounted Rusty with the easy grace of a man who spent more time on horseback than on foot. "I have next Sunday afternoon off, if you would like company for a walk, unless that is too forward of me." Nora felt a flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with anxiety and everything to do with the way Nathan looked at her, like she was a person rather than a problem to be solved or a prize to be won. "I would like that very much, Mr. Owens." "Nathan, please." "Mr. Owens makes me feel like I should be wearing a suit and sitting in a bank." "Then you must call me Nora." His smile lit up his whole face. "Until Sunday then, Nora." She watched him ride away, and for the first time since refusing Theodore's proposal, she felt something like hope. The following week dragged by with excruciating slowness. Nora worked at the mercantile, endured her father's sullen silence at home, and tried not to count the hours until Sunday. Theodore came by the store twice more, each time with thinly veiled reminders of what was at stake. Nora refused to engage, which only seemed to increase his determination. "He is not accustomed to being told no," Mrs. Patterson observed after Theodore's second visit. "Men like him think everything can be bought, including people." On Saturday evening, Samuel Wallace came home earlier than usual, his face flushed with whiskey and anger. "The bank sent another notice. We have 4 weeks, Nora. 4 weeks before they foreclose. This is your fault. If you had just accepted Ashworth's proposal, we would be secure. If you had not gambled away our money, we would not be in this situation." Nora shot back, her patience finally snapping. "You cannot put this all on me. I am doing what I can, but I will not marry a man I do not love to fix your mistakes." Her father's hand came up, and for a moment Nora thought he might strike her, but he stopped himself, dropping his arm to his side. "You are just like your mother, stubborn to the point of stupidity." "Mama was the strongest person I ever knew, and if being like her is stupid, then I will gladly be a fool." Samuel stumbled to his room without another word, leaving Nora shaking in the kitchen. She sank into a chair, head in her hands, wondering how much longer they could go on like this. Sunday dawned clear and bright, the kind of spring day that made even troubles seem lighter. Nora dressed carefully in her blue calico dress, the one her mother had made her the year before she died. She braided her dark hair and pinned it up, allowing a few curls to escape around her face. Nathan arrived on foot just after noon, having left Rusty at the livery. He had cleaned up, his hair still damp from washing, and wore what were clearly his best clothes, though they were still the practical garments of a working man. "You look lovely," he said, and the sincerity in his voice made Nora's cheeks warm. "Thank you. Where shall we walk?" "I thought perhaps toward the creek, if that suits you. It is pretty this time of year with the wildflowers." They walked through town, drawing curious glances from people out after church services. Nora kept her head high, refusing to be cowed by speculation. Once they left the main street behind, the landscape opened up into rolling hills dotted with oak trees. Nathan was easy to talk to. He asked about her work at the mercantile and actually listened to her answers. He told her about his life at the Henderson Ranch, the satisfaction of working with cattle and horses, the beauty of watching dawn break over the valley from horseback. "It is not glamorous work," he said as they picked their way down toward the creek, "and the pay is not much. But it is mine, you know. I am not beholden to anyone except for an honest day's work. I understand that. It is how I feel about working at the store. Even though the wages are small, I earn them myself." The creek bubbled over smooth stones, and wildflowers painted the banks in purple and gold. They sat on a fallen log, watching the water flow past. "Can I ask you something?" Nathan said after a while. "Why did you really refuse Ashworth?" "I know you said you did not love him, but it was more than that, was it not?" Nora considered the question carefully. "It was more than that. Theodore sees me as an object, something beautiful to own and display. When he looks at me, he does not see a person with thoughts and dreams. He sees what I represent: youth, beauty, something to possess. I could not live like that, always being less than a full person." Nathan nodded slowly. "My mother used to say that the measure of a man is not what he has but how he treats people who can do nothing for him. By that measure, Ashworth comes up short." "What about you?" Nora asked. "What do you see when you look at me?" The question was bold, but something about being here with Nathan made her brave. He turned to face her fully, his gray eyes serious. "I see someone strong. Someone who knows her own mind and has the courage to stand by her convictions even when it costs her. I see someone who works hard and cares about doing right, not doing easy. And yes, I see that you are beautiful, but that is not what I notice most." Nora's heart was beating fast. "What do you notice most?" "The way your eyes light up when you talk about something you care about. The kindness you show to customers at the store, even the difficult ones. The fact that you have every reason to be bitter about your circumstances, but you choose to keep going instead." He paused, a flush creeping up his neck. "I notice everything about you, Nora, if I am being honest." Without quite meaning to, Nora reached for his hand. His fingers were calloused and warm, folding around hers with gentle strength. They sat like that for a long moment, hands clasped, listening to the creek and the birdsong. "I notice things about you too," Nora admitted. "The way you are kind to your horse, how you listen when people talk instead of just waiting for your turn to speak. That you work hard without complaint and take pride in doing things right." She took a breath. "I notice that when you smile, it makes me want to smile too." Nathan lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that sent warmth flooding through her. "I know we have not known each other long, and I know you have enough troubles without me adding to them. But I want to be clear about my intentions, Nora. I am interested in courting you properly if you will have me. I cannot offer you wealth or security, not yet anyway. But I can offer you honesty and respect and feelings that grow stronger every time I see you. I would like that very much, Nora whispered. They walked back to town slowly, reluctant to let the afternoon end. At her door, Nathan squeezed her hand once more before leaving. Nora floated inside, her troubles temporarily forgotten in the glow of new feelings. That glow lasted until she saw her father's face. Samuel was pacing the parlor, and another man sat in the worn armchair, a banker Nora recognized from his occasional visits to the mercantile. "Miss Wallace," the banker said, standing, "I was just explaining to your father that the bank cannot extend any more grace on your mortgage. We need payment in full by the end of the month, or we will have to begin foreclosure proceedings." Nora's brief happiness evaporated. How much? $300. It might as well have been 3,000. Even with both her father's irregular income and her wages from the store, they could not possibly raise that amount in 4 weeks. After the banker left, Samuel turned to his daughter. "You see, this is what your pride has cost us. Theodore Ashworth would have paid this without blinking. Now we will lose everything." "We will find a way," Nora said, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "How?" "By selling ribbons and buttons. Face reality, girl. Our only hope is if you go to Ashworth and beg him to reconsider." "No. Then we are finished." Samuel grabbed his hat and headed for the door, no doubt bound for the saloon to drink away what little money they had left. After he left, Nora sat in the growing darkness and let herself cry. For her mother, who would have known what to do. For the impossible situation squeezing tighter every day. For the cruel timing of finding something real with Nathan just as everything else fell apart. But tears solved nothing. She dried her eyes and lit a lamp, then pulled out paper and pencil. There had to be a solution if she could just think clearly. She could ask for more hours at the mercantile, but Mrs. Patterson already struggled to afford what she was paying. She could try to find additional work, but where? Most households did their own cooking and cleaning, and she had no skills like sewing or teaching that might earn money. Her eyes fell on her mother's jewelry box, sitting on the shelf where it had remained untouched since the funeral. Inside were a few pieces. Her mother's wedding ring, a pearl necklace that had been a gift from Nora's grandmother, a brooch with a small sapphire. They were the last tangible pieces of her mother that Nora possessed, but what use were sentiments if she had no home? The next morning, before she could change her mind, Nora took the jewelry box to the one shop in Willits that might buy such things. The proprietor, a wizened man named Mr. Chen who had come from San Francisco during the gold rush years, examined each piece carefully through his jeweler's loupe. "I can give you $30 for all of it," he said finally. Nora's heart sank. She had hoped for more, though she had no real idea of their worth. "That is all. The pieces are nice but not exceptional. In a bigger city, perhaps more, but here, $30 is fair." It was not enough, not nearly enough, but it was something. Nora accepted the money with a heavy heart and went to work at the mercantile, trying not to think about the disappointment her mother would feel at seeing her treasures sold. Nathan came by the store that afternoon. One look at Nora's face, and he was pulling her aside, concern written in every line of his body. "What happened?" She told him about the banker's visit, the $300 they needed, her desperate sale of her mother's jewelry that had barely made a dent in the debt. Nathan listened, his jaw tight. "How much more do you need?" $270. It might as well be the moon. Nathan was quiet for a moment, thinking. "I have some money saved, not that much, but maybe $40. It is yours if it helps." Nora felt tears prick her eyes. I could not possibly take your savings. Why not? What good is money if not to help people you care about? He took her hand, right there in the store where anyone could see. Let me do this, Nora, please. I will pay you back, every cent, I swear it. We can talk about that later. Right now, let me get you the money. Over the next 2 weeks, Nora watched in amazement as Nathan did more than just offer his savings. He spoke to the other ranch hands at Henderson's, and several contributed what they could, small amounts that slowly added up. He helped Nora organize a bake sale, standing beside her at the table in the town square and charming customers into buying her pies and cakes. He even approached Mr. Henderson himself, explaining the situation and asking if there was any extra work that needed doing. Henderson, a fair man who had always respected Nathan's work ethic, offered him additional responsibilities for additional pay, but the most surprising help came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Patterson called Nora into the back room of the Mercantile one afternoon near the end of the 3rd week. I have been thinking about expanding my business, Mrs. Patterson said. I want to add a section for ready-made dresses and hired sewing. I know you can sew. Your mother taught you. I am willing to advance you $50 against future work if you are willing to take on the sewing projects in addition to your regular duties. Nora threw her arms around the older woman, surprising them both. Thank you so much. Your mother was my friend. I will not see her daughter thrown out on the street if I can help it. By the night before the payment was due, Nora counted and recounted the money gathered from all sources. $290. They were still $10 short. She sat at the kitchen table, fighting despair. They had come so close, but close would not satisfy the bank. Samuel had contributed nothing, spending his days at the saloon nursing his resentment and his whiskey. Tomorrow they would lose the house anyway, and all the effort and sacrifice would be for nothing. A knock at the door made her jump. It was late, nearly 9 o'clock. She opened it to find Nathan standing there, his hat in his hands. I have been thinking, he said without preamble. I have Rusty. He is worth at least $20, maybe more to the right buyer. I can sell him and no. Nora grabbed his arm, pulling him inside. Absolutely not. That horse is your most valuable possession. You need him for your work. You need your home. Not like this. I will not let you sacrifice something that important. They stood in the dim kitchen, the lamp casting shadows across Nathan's determined face. Nora, I care about you, more than I have cared about anyone in a long time. If I can help, I want to. You have already helped so much, more than I had any right to ask or expect. She reached up to touch his face, feeling the rough stubble along his jaw. I will not let you sell Rusty. We will find another way. There is no other way, not by tomorrow. Nora's mind raced. There was one way, one person who had the money and had made it clear he was willing to help if she would only bend to his will. The thought made her sick, but what choice did she have? Everyone had sacrificed so much to help her. How could she let it all be for nothing out of pride? I could go to Theodore, she said slowly, the words tasting like ash. Ask him to loan us the money. Nathan's expression darkened. You know what he will demand in return. Perhaps I can negotiate, agree to reconsider his proposal by some time. And then what? Keep putting him off until he loses patience. Nora, you know how this ends if you go to him. What else can I do? Let my father lose his home. He is selfish and weak, but he is still my father. And Mrs. Patterson advanced me money in good faith. If I lose the house, I lose my credibility. She might not be able to hire me anymore. Nora felt tears sliding down her cheeks. I am out of options. Nathan pulled her into his arms, and she collapsed against his chest, letting out all the fear and frustration of the past weeks. His hand stroked her hair gently. Listen to me, he said quietly. You do have another option, though you might think it is crazy. Marry me." Nora pulled back to look at him. "What? Marry me? Not because you have to and not to save your father's house, though that would be a benefit. Marry me because in the short time I have known you, you have become the most important person in my world. I know it is fast, maybe too fast, but I also know that what I feel for you is real and strong and not going away. Nathan, you cannot want to take on my problems like this. I want to take on your problems, your dreams, your future, all of it. I want to wake up next to you every morning and come home to you every evening. I want to build something together, something that is ours." He cupped her face in his hands. "I love you, Nora Wallace. I think I started loving you that first morning by the water trough when you looked at me like I was a person worth seeing." Nora felt her heart expanding in her chest, filling with a feeling so intense it almost hurt. "I love you too. I have been trying not to because everything is such a mess and I did not want to drag you into it, but I love you so much it scares me. Then marry me. Tomorrow. We will combine what we have, pay off the debt together and start our life. I will not pretend it will be easy. We will both have to work hard and money will be tight, but we will face it together. Are you sure? Really sure? Because once we do this, you are tied to me and my father's mess and all of it. I have never been more sure of anything in my life." Nathan kissed her then, gentle and sweet and full of promise. "Say yes, Nora. Take a chance on the cowboy with dirt on his boots instead of the rich man in the big house." "Yes," Nora whispered against his lips. "Yes, I will marry you." They made their plans quickly. Nathan left to speak with the circuit preacher who was currently in town, while Nora went to wake her father and tell him what was happening. Samuel was surprisingly docile, perhaps too drunk to fully comprehend the situation. The next morning, Nora dressed in her mother's wedding dress, carefully preserved in tissue paper. It fit nearly perfectly, needing only a small adjustment to the waist. Mrs. Patterson arrived early to help with her hair and to stand as witness, her eyes suspiciously bright. "Your mother would be so proud of you," Mrs. Patterson said, tucking flowers into Nora's braid. "Following your heart and choosing the right man for the right reasons." The ceremony was simple, held in the small church with only a handful of people present. Mrs. Patterson, Mr. Henderson, who had insisted on coming when Nathan told him the news, the preacher, and Samuel Wallace, who watched the proceedings with something that might have been regret in his eyes. Nathan wore his cleanest shirt and trousers, his boots polished as much as old leather could be polished. When Nora walked down the short aisle to join him at the altar, the look on his face took her breath away. He gazed at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. The preacher kept it brief, speaking of commitment and love and the hard work of building a marriage. When it came time for vows, Nathan's voice was steady and sure. "I promise to love you and respect you and work beside you every day of our lives. I promise to be honest with you, even when the truth is hard. I promise to choose you every day for as long as I live." Nora's voice trembled but did not break. "I promise to love you with my whole heart. I promise to stand beside you in hard times and good times. I promise to build a life with you based on trust and honesty and the kind of love that grows stronger every day." When the preacher pronounced them married and Nathan kissed her, Nora felt a sense of rightness settle over her. This was what she had been refusing to settle for, this feeling of partnership and genuine love. After the ceremony, they went directly to the bank with their combined money. The teller counted it carefully while Nora held her breath. $298. "You are still $2 short," the teller said. Mr. Henderson, who had followed them to the bank, stepped forward. "I believe Mr. Owens here did some work for me that I have not yet compensated him for. Consider this back wages." He placed $2 silver on the counter. Nathan tried to protest, but Henderson waved him off. "You are a good worker and a good man, Nathan. This is an investment in good people, and that is never money wasted." The teller prepared the receipt showing the mortgage paid in full. Samuel Wallace's house was safe, at least for now. Walking out of the bank as a married woman felt surreal. Nathan's hand was warm around hers, and Nora kept glancing at the simple gold band on her finger that had belonged to Nathan's mother. "What do we do now?" she asked. "Now we figure out where we are going to live." "I have a room at the ranch bunkhouse, but that is no place for a married couple. We need our own place." "We could stay at my father's house, at least temporarily," Nora suggested, though the idea was not appealing. Nathan was quiet for a moment. "Let me talk to Mr. Henderson first. He mentioned something a few weeks ago about the old foreman's cabin standing empty. It needs work, but if he would let us fix it up in exchange for rent, it might be a solution." Mr. Henderson proved agreeable to the plan. The cabin was small and had been unoccupied for 2 years since the last foreman retired and moved to Sacramento to live with his daughter. The roof needed patching, the windows needed replacing, and everything was covered in a thick layer of dust and neglect. But it had good bones, a stone fireplace, and most importantly, it could be theirs. Over the next 2 weeks, Nathan spent every spare moment working on the cabin. Nora joined him after her shifts at the mercantile, scrubbing and cleaning and sewing curtains from fabric remnants Mrs. Patterson gave her at cost. Other ranch hands pitched in, helping to replace rotted boards and fix the roof. Mrs. Patterson donated some spare furniture from her attic. Slowly, the little cabin transformed. It was not fancy, but it was clean and snug and filled with the effort of their combined work. Nora planted wildflowers in the front yard and herbs by the kitchen door. Nathan built shelves and a table, his careful craftsmanship evident in every joint. "It is not much," Nathan said on the evening they finally moved in their last belongings. "It is perfect," Nora replied, meaning it. This place was theirs, built on their own terms through their own labor. No debt hung over it, no expectations except what they chose to create together. That first night in their cabin, they lay together in the narrow bed, watching moonlight stream through the clean windows. Nathan pulled Nora close, her head resting on his chest where she could hear the steady beat of his heart. "You have any regrets?" he asked softly. "Not a single one." Nora tilted her head up to kiss him. "I chose right. I chose love and partnership over security and status, and I would make the same choice 1,000 times." "You chose dirt on my boots over polish on his," Nathan teased gently. "I chose the man who sees me as a person, not a possession. That is worth more than all the polished boots in the world." They made love slowly, learning each other with gentle hands and whispered words. Afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, Nora felt a peace she had never known before. The future was still uncertain, money would be tight, and there would be hard work ahead. But they would face it together, and that made all the difference. As the weeks turned to months, Nora and Nathan settled into the rhythm of married life. Nora continued working at the mercantile, her sewing work bringing an additional income that they carefully saved. Nathan took on extra responsibilities at the ranch, proving himself so valuable that Mr. Henderson promoted him to assistant foreman with a corresponding increase in wages. They visited Samuel Wallace regularly, though the relationship remained strained. Nora's father had not stopped drinking or gambling, but knowing his daughter was settled seemed to ease some of his bitterness. He was civil to Nathan, which was more than Nora had hoped for initially. Theodore Ashworth remained in Willits, his timber business thriving. Nora occasionally saw him in town, and though his gaze would linger on her, he never approached. She heard through town gossip that he had begun courting a young woman from a wealthy family in Ukiah, someone more suited to his ambitions. "Does it bother you?" Nathan asked one evening after Nora had seen Theodore's carriage pass by their cabin. "Seeing him, knowing what he has compared to what we have." Nora looked around their small cabin, at the wildflowers on the table, at the quilt she had sewn spread across their bed, at her husband's honest face in the firelight. "Not even a little bit. I have everything I want right here." Summer faded into fall and fall into winter. The valley transformed with each season, and Nora fell more in love with the land and with her life. She had never worked so hard or been so tired, but she had also never been so happy. In January, Nora realized she had not had her monthly courses in some time. Mrs. Patterson, experienced in such matters, confirmed what Nora had begun to suspect. She was pregnant. Nathan's reaction when she told him was everything she could have hoped for. He picked her up and spun her around, whooping with joy, then immediately set her down gently, concerned he had been too rough. "We are going to have a baby," he kept saying, as if he could not quite believe it. "An actual baby." "It appears so," Nora laughed. "Are you ready to be a father?" "I have no idea, but I am excited to find out." Nathan placed his hand on her still flat belly with wonder. "Hello in there, little one. We are already so excited to meet you." The pregnancy was not easy. Nora suffered from terrible sickness in the early months that made working at the mercantile difficult. Mrs. Patterson was understanding, letting her sit when needed and giving her lighter duties. As winter gave way to spring, the sickness faded, replaced by exhaustion and an ever-growing belly. Nathan was attentive and worried, fussing over Nora constantly. He brought her wildflowers, rubbed her aching feet, and talked to the baby every night, telling their child about the ranch and the horses and how much they were already loved. "You think it will be a boy or a girl?" Nora asked one evening in late spring as they sat outside watching the sunset. "I do not care, as long as you both come through healthy," Nathan said. "Though I have been thinking about names. If it is a boy, perhaps Nathaniel after my father. If it is a girl, maybe Clara after your mother." Tears filled Nora's eyes, which happened frequently these days. "Mama would have loved that. She would have loved you too. I wish I could have met her. She would have approved of you immediately. She had a good sense about people." As summer arrived and Nora's belly grew round and full, preparations intensified. Nathan built a cradle from oak wood, sanding it smooth as silk. Nora sewed tiny gowns and blankets, her hands working the familiar motions while her mind wandered to thoughts of the baby she would soon hold. Mrs. Patterson threw a small gathering of the women in town, presenting Nora with gifts of practical items and advice. Even Samuel Wallace seemed to soften at the prospect of a grandchild. He visited more often, always sober on these visits, and once brought a small wooden horse he had carved himself. "I made this for you when you were a baby," he admitted gruffly. "Thought perhaps you would want it for the little one." Nora hugged her father, feeling the wall between them crack slightly. "Thank you, Papa. It is perfect." On a hot August afternoon in 1877, while Nathan was working at a far pasture, Nora's water broke. She was at home doing laundry, and the sudden gush of fluid soaked through her dress and pooled on the floor. For a moment, she stood frozen. Then the first contraction hit like a wave. Mrs. Patterson had made Nora promise to send word as soon as labor started. Nora managed to get to a neighbor's house, and within an hour, Mrs. Patterson arrived with the midwife, a capable woman named Mrs. Gregory, who had delivered half the babies in Mendocino County. Someone was sent to fetch Nathan from the ranch. Labor progressed slowly, painfully. Mrs. Gregory examined Nora and declared that it would be many hours yet. Nora tried to be brave, but as the contractions grew stronger and closer together, She found herself crying out. Nathan arrived as evening fell, bursting through the door with wild eyes. Mrs. Gregory intercepted him. "You cannot be in here right now. This is women's work." "That is my wife," Nathan said firmly. "I am not leaving her." He came to Nora's side, taking her hand, and when the next contraction hit, she squeezed so hard she was sure she must be breaking his fingers. But Nathan did not flinch, just murmured encouragement and wiped the sweat from her face. The night stretched long and difficult. Several times Mrs. Gregory's expression grew concerned, and Nora saw her exchange worried glances with Mrs. Patterson. The baby was large and Nora was small. Between contractions, Nora prayed with everything she had. Finally, as dawn light began filtering through the windows, Mrs. Gregory commanded Nora to push. With Nathan supporting her back and whispering that he loved her, that she was strong, that she could do this, Nora bore down with every ounce of strength left in her exhausted body. The pain was like nothing she had ever imagined, but then, suddenly, it eased. A thin wail filled the cabin and Mrs. Gregory was lifting a small, red-faced baby. "It is a boy," she announced with a tired smile. "A big, healthy boy." Nora collapsed back against Nathan, who was openly crying. Mrs. Gregory cleaned the baby quickly, cut the cord, and placed the squalling infant on Nora's chest. He was perfect. Dark hair plastered to his small head, tiny fists waving angrily, his face scrunched up in outrage at being expelled from his warm haven. But he was breathing and crying lustily and absolutely perfect. "Hello, Nathaniel," Nora whispered, touching one small hand. The baby's fingers immediately curled around hers with surprising strength. "We have been waiting for you." Nathan reached over to touch his son's head with one gentle finger, his face filled with awe. "He is so small and perfect. You did so well, Nora. You were amazing." After Mrs. Gregory ensured that both mother and baby were stable, she and Mrs. Patterson left the new family alone. Nathan climbed carefully into bed beside Nora, his arm around her as they both gazed at their son. "We made him," Nathan said wonderingly. "This perfect little person came from us." "He has your chin," Nora observed. "And my mother's nose, I think." Baby Nathaniel, whom they immediately began calling Nate, began to root at Nora's chest. With Mrs. Gregory's earlier instruction, Nora managed to help him latch on and nurse. The tug was strange but not unpleasant, and the contentment on her son's face as he fed made her heart swell. "I cannot believe I refused Theodore's proposal," Nora said softly. "I cannot imagine a life where this did not happen, where you were not here, where Nate was not ours." "You chose right," Nathan assured her. "You chose us before you even knew us. That took more courage than I can say." The first weeks with a newborn were exhausting. Nate was a good baby but still woke every few hours to nurse. Nora was recovering from the birth, still sore and tired. Nathan took time off from the ranch to help, changing diapers and walking the floor with a fussy baby while Nora grabbed a few precious hours of sleep. Mr. Henderson stopped by with a gift, a cradle rocker he had used for his own children years ago. "Welcome to fatherhood, Nathan. If you can survive the first year, the rest is easy." Nathan laughed tiredly. "I am not sure I believe that, sir, but I appreciate the sentiment." As Nate grew from newborn to infant, his personality began to emerge. He was a serious baby, studying the world with solemn dark eyes. He loved being outside, fussing indoors but calming immediately when carried into the yard. He was fascinated by the ranch animals, going still with concentration when Nathan held him near the horses. "We might have a future rancher on our hands," Nathan observed one afternoon, watching 6-month-old Nate stare intently at Rusty. "Or a future horseman," Nora agreed. "He definitely has opinions about what he likes." By Nate's first birthday, life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Nora had returned to part-time work at the mercantile, bringing Nate with her. Mrs. Patterson doted on the baby, keeping him entertained in a pen in the back room while Nora worked. Nathan had been promoted to full foreman at the Henderson Ranch, a position that came with increased responsibility but also better pay and the promise that someday, if they saved carefully, they might be able to buy some land of their own. Money was still tight, but they were managing. The little cabin had been expanded slightly with Nathan's careful work, adding a second small bedroom for Nate. Nora had a vegetable garden that provided much of their food in the warm months. They were careful with every penny, but they were building something together, slowly and steadily. Samuel Wallace was a frequent visitor, surprising everyone with how devoted he was to his grandson. He had cut back on drinking, though not stopped entirely, and the gambling had lessened. He carved toys for Nate and told him stories, and the softness in his face when he looked at the boy reminded Nora of when her mother had been alive. "I am sorry," he told Nora one afternoon while Nate napped, "for how I behaved, for pressuring you to marry Ashworth, for all of it. You were right to refuse him. You chose well with Nathan. Thank you, Papa, that means more than you know. Your mother would be proud of you, of the woman you have become, of the family you have built." Samuel's eyes were suspiciously bright. "I have made a lot of mistakes, Nora, but you are not one of them. You are the best thing I ever had a hand in creating." Nora hugged her father, feeling the wounds between them finally begin to heal. Another year passed, then another. Nate grew from baby to toddler to a sturdy little boy with his father's gray eyes and his mother's stubborn streak. He followed Nathan everywhere, toddling after him on unsteady legs, determined to help with ranch work even though he was far too small. In the spring of 1880, Nora realized she was pregnant again. This pregnancy was easier than the first, perhaps because she knew what to expect. Nathan was thrilled, though also terrified, remembering how difficult Nate's birth had been. What if something goes wrong this time? He worried. Then we will face it together like we face everything, Nora assured him. But I feel good this time, different than before. I think this one will be easier. She was right. In October, Nora went into labor on a cool morning. This time the baby came quickly, so quickly that Mrs. Gregory barely made it in time. Nathan held Nora up as she pushed, and within a few hours a daughter was born. Clara Owens came into the world with a head of dark hair and lungs that could wake the dead. Where Nate had been serious and observant, Clara was vocal and demanding. She nursed vigorously, slept poorly, and made her presence known in every moment. "She's going to keep us on our toes," Nathan observed, walking the floor at 2 in the morning with a wailing Clara while Nora tried to rest. "Just like my mother," Nora said fondly. Mama never did anything quietly either. 2-year-old Nate was fascinated by his baby sister, wanting to touch her constantly. Under supervision, he would gently pat her head and try to give her his toys. "Baby," he would say proudly to anyone who would listen. "My baby." The cabin felt smaller with 4 people, but they made it work. Nathan started drawing plans for a larger house they might build someday when they had saved enough. In the meantime, they squeezed together in their small space and counted themselves blessed. Mr. Henderson approached Nathan in the spring of 1881 with a proposition. He was getting older and wanted to start scaling back his involvement in the ranch. He offered to sell Nathan a quarter share of the operation, with the promise of eventually buying the whole thing when Henderson was ready to fully retire. "I cannot possibly afford that," Nathan said, his heart sinking even as hope flared. "I am not asking for payment all at once. We can work out terms, take it out of your share of the profits. You have made this ranch more profitable than it has ever been, Nathan. You have earned this opportunity. Nathan discussed it with Nora that night after the children were asleep. They went over the numbers carefully, considering what it would mean for their future. It is a risk, Nathan said. If the ranch has a bad year, we could end up in debt worse than when we started. It is also an opportunity, Nora countered. You have worked so hard, Nathan. You have proven yourself 10 times over. This is your chance to build something that can be ours, that we can pass on to Nate and Clara someday. Are you sure? It would mean tighter budgets for a while, being even more careful with money. Nora took his hands in hers. I married a cowboy with dirt on his boots because I believed in him and what we could build together. I still believe that. If this is what you want, then we will make it work. Nathan became a part owner of the Henderson Ranch. The work was harder than ever, the responsibility heavier, but there was pride in it too. This was his land now, at least in part. The cattle bore his brand as well as Henderson's. The profits were partially his to share. Over the next few years, the ranch prospered under Nathan's management. He had a gift for reading the land and the market, knowing when to sell and when to hold cattle for better prices. He treated the ranch hands fairly, earning their loyalty and hard work in return. Slowly, painfully slowly, the debt to Henderson was paid down. Nora continued working at the mercantile, though less frequently as the children grew older and the ranch became more profitable. She took on more sewing work, which she could do from home while watching Nate and Clara. Her careful management of the household meant they saved more than seemed possible on their income. In 1883, tragedy struck when Samuel Wallace died of a sudden heart attack. Despite their complicated history, Nora grieved deeply for her father. He had never quite overcome his demons, but he had tried, especially in those last years. He had been a loving grandfather, and Nate especially had adored him. The funeral was well attended, Samuel having been in Willits for many years. Theodore Ashworth was there with his wife, a thin woman with nervous hands. Theodore caught Nora's eye across the graveyard and nodded respectfully. Nora nodded back, the gesture carrying acknowledgement of their shared history without regret. Samuel's house was sold to pay his remaining debts. What little was left, Nora put into a fund for her children's future. It was not much, but it was something. Life continued its forward march. Nate started school and proved to have his mother's intelligence and his father's steady nature. Clara was wild and energetic, constantly climbing things she should not and bringing home every stray animal she found. A third child, a son they named Samuel after Nora's father, was born in 1884. By 1885, Nathan had bought out Mr. Henderson's remaining share of the ranch. The Henderson Ranch became the Owens Ranch, though they kept the old name out of respect for the man who had given Nathan his chance. Henderson himself moved to San Francisco to live with his daughter, leaving Nathan in full control. "We did it," Nathan said the night the final papers were signed. He and Nora sat on the porch of the larger house they had finally built the year before, watching the sun set over their land. "We actually did it." "You did it," Nora corrected. "Your hard work, your skill, your dedication. We did it together. I could not have done any of this without you, Nora. Your belief in me, your support, your own hard work keeping us afloat in those lean years." Nathan pulled her close. "Do you remember that day by the creek when I asked you to marry me? Of course. You said you could not offer me wealth or security, only honesty and respect and growing feelings. I was wrong about the wealth and security part, it seems." Nathan gestured at the house, the land spreading out around them. "You were not wrong," Nora said. "You offered me what mattered, and the rest came from that foundation. The wealth and security are nice, but they are not what I married you for." "What did you marry me for, really?" Nora thought about that scared young woman refusing Theodore Ashworth's proposal, about meeting Nathan by the water trough, about all the years of hard work and love that had followed. I married you because you saw me, not what I could do for you, not what I represented, but me. I married you because I would rather be poor with you than rich with someone else. I married you because you had dirt on your boots and calluses on your hands and a heart big enough to take on my problems without complaint. And now, do you have any regrets? Nora laughed. Not a single one. I have everything I never knew I needed. They sat together as darkness fell, comfortable in the silence that came from years of partnership. In the distance, they could hear Clara singing to the barn cats, Nate helping the ranch hands with evening chores, and baby Samuel giggling at something his nursemaid showed him. She refused a rich man's proposal, Nathan said softly, almost to himself. And the cowboy with dirt on his boots won her heart instead. He did not just win her heart, Nora corrected, lacing her fingers through his. He won her whole life and gave her one worth living in return. That is a much better bargain than all of Theodore Ashworth's money could have bought. The years that followed were not without challenges. There were droughts that tested the ranch, and market fluctuations that required careful navigation. There were illnesses and injuries, the normal trials of raising children and running a business. But Nathan and Nora faced each challenge together, their partnership strengthened by every obstacle overcome. Nate grew into a young man as dedicated to the land as his father. He worked the ranch alongside Nathan, learning everything there was to know about cattle, horses, and land management. By the time he was 18, he was as valuable as any of the experienced hands. Clara remained a force of nature, beautiful and willful and tender-hearted. She collected stray animals with the same determination she applied to everything else, and the Owens ranch became known for the menagerie she maintained. She also had her mother's head for business and often helped Nora with the ranch accounts. Samuel, the youngest, was quieter than his siblings but observant and clever. He loved books and learning, and Nora wondered if he might be the one to get a formal education, perhaps become a teacher or lawyer. In 1890, Nora stood in her kitchen preparing supper while Clara helped, and Samuel did his homework at the table. Through the window, she could see Nathan and Nate working with a new horse in the corral. At 42, Nathan was still strong and capable, though there were threads of silver in his hair now. Nate at 15 was nearly as tall as his father, lean and serious. "Mama, do you think I will find a love like you and Papa have?" Clara asked suddenly. At 13, she was beginning to notice boys, though she claimed to find them all stupid. Nora considered the question carefully. "I think if you are true to yourself and do not settle for less than you deserve, love will find you. I could have married a rich man and had an easier life in some ways. But I chose your father because my heart knew what my head took longer to understand, that a partnership built on genuine love and respect is worth more than all the money in the world." "Did you know right away that Papa was the one?" "Not right away. But I knew that he saw me as a person, not as a possession or a solution to a problem. I knew that he was good and honest and kind. The rest grew from there." "I want that," Clara said firmly. "Someone who sees me." "Then do not settle for less, my darling, no matter what anyone else says you should do." That evening, after the children were in bed, Nathan found Nora in the parlor, working on mending by lamplight. He sat beside her, taking her hand. "What were you and Clara talking about this afternoon?" She had a very thoughtful expression at supper. "Love, marriage, the importance of not settling." Nora set aside her mending. "She is growing up, Nathan. They all are, too fast." Nathan sighed. "Seems like yesterday you were telling me about Nate and now look at him, nearly a man." He is a good man, thanks to your example. Our example, Nathan corrected. You are the heart of this family, Nora. I am just the one who goes out and does the obvious work. You are the one who keeps us all together, who makes this house a home. We are a team. We always have been. Nathan lifted her hand to his lips, the gesture still sending warmth through her after all these years. I love you, Nora Owens, more today than yesterday and less than tomorrow. You are getting sentimental in your old age, Nora teased, but her eyes were bright with emotion. Just speaking the truth. You took a chance on a cowboy with nothing but dirt on his boots and dreams in his head. You made those dreams reality by believing in them, in me, in us. The years continued to pass, bringing change and growth. Nate met and married a rancher's daughter from Ukiah, a sensible young woman named Emma who fit into the family as if she had always been there. They built a house on the edge of the Owens property and had children of their own, making Nathan and Nora grandparents. Clara shocked everyone by falling in love with a veterinarian who came to tend the ranch animals. He was as kind to strays as she was, and their wedding in 1893 was the social event of the season in Willits. Samuel earned a scholarship to the University of California and went off to study law, making his parents immensely proud. He would return to practice in Mendocino County, but the fact that he had the opportunity for higher education was something Nathan and Nora had worked hard to provide. By 1900, as a new century dawned, Nathan and Nora sat together on the porch of their home, older now but still strong. The Owens Ranch was one of the most successful in the county. Their children were settled and happy. Their grandchildren filled the house with noise and laughter during visits. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you had said yes to Theodore Ashworth? Nathan asked, the question coming out of nowhere. Nora looked at him in surprise. After all these years? No, I do not wonder. I know exactly what would have happened. I would have been miserable in a gilded cage, married to a man who saw me as property. I would have had material comfort but spiritual poverty. I still cannot believe you chose me. That morning by the water trough, if someone had told me I would marry you and we would build all this, I would have called them crazy. You were kind to your horse, Nora said, as if that explained everything. And you looked at me like I was a real person, not just a pretty face or a problem to be solved. That mattered more than you could have known. Rusty, Nathan said with a laugh. That old horse has been gone 10 years, but he was the best wingman a man could ask for. Got me the girl just by being thirsty. They laughed together, the sound comfortable and warm. Below them, the ranch spread out in the fading light. Cattle grazed in the distance. Horses moved in the corrals. Everything they could see was built by their hands and their partnership. No regrets. Nathan asked. Not a single one. You? Only that I have one life to live with you instead of 1,000. Nathan stood and offered his hand. Come on, Mrs. Owens, let's go inside. I believe Clara is bringing the grandchildren tomorrow and we will need our rest. Nora took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. His touch was as familiar as her own and just as essential. They walked inside together, ready for whatever tomorrow brought, knowing they would face it side by side as they always had. The years that followed were gentle to them. Nathan's health remained good well into his 60s, and Nora retained her sharp mind and kind heart. They stepped back from the day-to-day operations of the ranch, letting Nate take over while they focused on enjoying their grandchildren and each other. They traveled a little, seeing San Francisco and Sacramento, marveling at how the world was changing with automobiles and electric lights. But they always returned to their ranch, to the land they had built their lives upon. On their 40th wedding anniversary in 1916, their children and grandchildren gathered for a celebration. The house was full of people and noise, exactly as Nathan and Nora preferred it. When it came time to cut the cake, Nate raised his glass for a toast. To my parents, who taught me what real love looks like. You showed us that the best foundation for a life together is not money or status, but honesty, respect, and genuine partnership. You chose each other when it was hard, you worked together through every challenge, and you built something remarkable. You are the example we all aspire to. Clara added her own words. Mama refused a rich man because she knew her own worth and would not settle for less than true love. Papa won her heart by seeing her as a partner, not a possession. That is the greatest love story I know. That night, lying in bed with Nathan's arm around her, Nora reflected on the journey that had brought them here. From that desperate morning when she refused Theodore's proposal through the fear and uncertainty, to this moment of abundance and joy. "What are you thinking about?" Nathan asked sleepily. "How it all started. How scared I was, but how sure at the same time that I was doing the right thing." "You were magnificent, are magnificent." Nathan kissed her temple. "I am the luckiest man alive. We are both lucky. We found each other, we chose each other, and we built this life together. That is not luck, that is grace." They drifted off to sleep together as they had for 40 years, comfortable and content. Nathan passed away in his sleep in 1920 at the age of 72. Nora woke to find him beside her, peaceful and still. After the initial shock and grief, there was something almost gentle about it. He had not suffered, had not faded slowly. He had simply finished his life and stepped into whatever came next. The funeral was huge, the whole county turning out to pay respects to a man who had lived well and treated people fairly. Nora stood beside the grave with her children and grandchildren around her, and though her heart was broken, there was also gratitude. They had had 43 years together. Not everyone was so blessed. In the months after Nathan's death, Nora moved into the small cottage that Nate and Emma had built for them years ago, letting the next generation take over the main house. She spent her days in her garden with her grandchildren and working on a detailed history of the ranch and family for future generations. She lived another 8 years, dying peacefully in her garden on a spring morning in 1928, surrounded by the flowers she loved. The last thing she saw was a cowboy on horseback in the distance, and though it was just one of the ranch hands, for a moment she could have sworn it was Nathan, young again, waiting for her. They buried her beside Nathan, and on the stone beneath their names, Nate had inscribed, "She chose love over gold. He gave her both." The Owens Ranch continued to prosper under Nate's management and eventually passed to his children and grandchildren. The story of Nathan and Nora became family legend, told to each new generation as an example of what real love looked like. Clara's great-granddaughter, writing a school paper about family history in 1960, interviewed her elderly grandmother about the family's beginnings. "Tell me about the proposal Nora refused," the girl asked. "Your great-great-grandmother was a woman who knew her own mind," Clara explained, old now but still sharp. "She had an offer from one of the richest men in the county, a marriage that would have given her everything money could buy. But she said no because she understood something important. You cannot put a price on being truly seen and valued as a person. When she met Nathan, he was just a cowboy with dirt on his boots and a good heart. He did not have wealth or status to offer. But he had something better. He saw her as an equal, a partner, someone to build a life with rather than someone to possess. But they ended up wealthy anyway, right? The ranch became successful. They did, but that is not the point. The point is that they built that success together, based on love and partnership and hard work. If Nora had married Theodore Ashworth, she might have had an easier life in some ways, but it would not have been her life. It would have been his life with her as an accessory. She chose to build her own life with a man who respected her enough to be a true partner. That is romantic. It is more than romantic. It is a roadmap for how to live. Nora taught all of us through her example that we should never settle for less than we deserve. That real love is about partnership and respect, not money or status. That's sometimes the most important choices we make, are the ones where we say no to the wrong thing so we can say yes to the right thing. The girl looked at the old photographs of Nathan and Nora, young and strong, dirt on his boots and determination in her eyes. I want to love like that someday. Then remember what she taught us. Know your worth, do not settle, and look for someone who sees you as a partner, not a possession. The rest will follow. Years later, when historians looked back at the development of Mendocino County, the Owens Ranch was noted as one of the success stories of the era. But for the family, it was never about the success or the wealth. It was about two people who chose each other when it was hard, who worked together through challenges, and who built something lasting based on love, respect, and partnership. The story of Nora refusing a rich man's proposal and choosing instead the cowboy with dirt on his boots became more than just family history. It became a reminder that the best things in life are not bought but built, not given but earned through hard work and genuine love. And in the small cemetery outside Willits, California, two stones stood side by side, marking the resting place of a partnership that had lasted a lifetime and created ripples that extended through generations. Nathan and Nora Owens had lived well, loved deeply, and left a legacy that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with what really mattered: choosing right, working hard, and loving truly. Their story ended the way all good love stories should, with a life fully lived, a love fully realized, and a legacy that endured long after they were gone. From that moment when Nora refused Theodore's proposal to the day Nathan rode up to the water trough with dirt on his boots, through 43 years of marriage and partnership, they proved that the best foundation for any life is genuine love freely given and gratefully received. The cowboy with dirt on his boots won her heart not by offering wealth or status, but by offering something far more valuable: a partnership of equals, a love built on respect and honesty, and a willingness to work side by side through whatever life brought. That was worth more than all of Theodore Ashworth's money could ever buy, and Nora knew it from the start. She chose right. They both did. And the life they built together stood as testament to the power of that choice for generations to come.